without further ado, we'll bring out our first speaker, who is Visa's Chief Risk Officer, Paul Fabara. Paul? Thanks so much for being here, Paul.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Awesome. So, Paul, you sit at a very interesting company that all of us know, right? But we probably all think about it in terms of credit cards, I don't know, payments, et cetera. But maybe don't think about it in terms of scam detection, fraud, investigations. So maybe to level set for those in the room who are maybe too shy to ask and don't have the microphone to ask, level set and tell us a little bit about where Visa sits in this ecosystem. How are you helping law enforcement? What is kind of the insights that you have in your own telemetry, things like that?
First of all, thanks for the invitation. Indeed, we sit right in the middle of the crossroads when it comes to connecting buyers and sellers safely. And just to give you sort of a point of reference, we process around, in fact, this year we're going to be processing around a tad under $15 trillion in payments and around 260 billion transactions. And so we get to see both ends of what's happening as money moves through the payments ecosystem. And of course, as you can imagine, crooks are hard at work and taking advantage of every opportunity out there. And one of the things that we've done as a company is we invest a fair amount of money in terms of securing the lines to make sure that those transactions are indeed safe. As an example, over the past 5 years, we have spent around $500 million just in AI alone, and around $12 billion to protect our ecosystem. And that means, again, all of our network around the world.
Wow. And so maybe you can help me figure this out, right? I feel like my inbox in the last 6 to 12 months has been filled with announcements, usually from DOJ, but others as well in law enforcement, that are cracking down on scams, whether it's, the cyber scams are in Myanmar or elsewhere, right? Maybe you can help me figure out what has changed in the last year. What tactics are kind of leading to this? Does it feel like law enforcement is really, finding their groove in these investigations? What is happening?
So first of all, the ecosystem has shifted dramatically. The proliferation of digital payments, which includes mobile, it's created, of course, the perfect platform for crooks. And what's happening in there is that more than ever, crooks have access to a lot more data than before. It doesn't take much to be able to be a crook out there. You need a digital device, access to the dark web, probably $15 to buy a program, and off you go. And the reality, again, is that, as you can imagine, with so much social information in the ecosystem, they have so much information in terms of consumer behavior that allow them to start mining this data so they can understand how you shop, where you shop, and be able to use that as an opportunity to, of course, breach those transactions. And that's where we come in to ensure that the ecosystem is fully protected. But what has shifted, again, is the proliferation on digital commerce. We haven't seen it in the past 30 years. Totally. And that kind of feeds really nicely into my other question, which is, it was earlier this year that Visa stood up its own scam detection practice. For those in the room who are familiar with maybe how cybersecurity firms have their own threat intel and incident response practices, this is kind of a Visa equivalent of that. And Paul will correct me if I'm wrong. He's saying I'm right. Amazing. I love it when that happens. Maybe walk us through, that was stood up maybe, I want to say like February or so, Correct.
if I'm remembering. Hell yeah. And so maybe walk us through how that's grown and how that's going in its first year. Are there any, you might not be able to talk about it, any success stories you can tease or kind of give us a little bit of insight into how that practice works, what you guys are digging into and things like that?
So the program indeed has less than a year of existence, but the reality is that we've been testing for the past 3 years.
Yeah.
And so before we went live, we want to make sure that we have a program that ultimately is going to be designed and performs well when it comes to catching all these bad guys and all these scam issues around the world. And of course, not all scams are created equal. Some of them are highly sophisticated. Some of them are entry level. And so the program is designed to be able to operate on both ends of the spectrum. And so far it's been really, really good. We're catching a lot of fraud out there. And we feel pretty good about it. We have been able to protect around $1 billion of this would be transactions that we deem to be fraudulent. From a scam perspective, of course, at that point, the issuers will review it to make sure that they take a look at it in greater detail to ensure, again, that the consumer is fully protected.
Gotcha. And I know you might be kind of bound in terms of what you're able to talk about, right? I think pretty typical of any investigation, and you don't want attackers to know what you know, how you figured it out. But I am wondering if you can maybe help people when you're talking about scams, like what types of scams you guys are really digging into in a broad way. I don't know if it's just the ones that start as text, or if they're just primarily at retailers, or what that looks like.
So scams are very cyclical, and they follow patterns that are related to consumer behavior. So if you think about it right now, coming closer to the holidays, one of the things that you're going to see, the deals that are too good to be true. And of course, they take advantage of that. And in a couple months, it will be tax refund, where they're going to give you a deal of a lifetime, and where you're not going to have to pay taxes for the next 10 years for a nominal fee. Whatever that nominal fee is, and by the time you pay the fee, not only you pay to a scammer, but also they drain, of course, your account, and they use your credentials to commit other sorts of crimes. And so it follows a very strict pattern. What is different is the type of scams. They're shifting from shipping scams to both the scams, and probably the category that is dominating, especially in Asia, which is romance scams. Yeah. Those are coming fast and furious. Obviously, our program is designed to detect those scams and try to stop them as fast as we can to ensure they don't take much traction around the world. But as you can imagine, this is the old whack-a-mole sort of game. As we stop one, another one emerges out there. And a lot of it is on speed of execution. It's how quickly you can identify the scam before it, again, moves around the world. One thing that is unique today is that we have a war against organized crime, cartels, nation states, and individuals, and operating in some cases in unison around multiple continents. And so that makes it, of course, for a much more complicated ecosystem.
Gotcha. And then something that I find really interesting about this practice is that it is probably super unique in the payment space in general, right? I don't know of others off the top of my head. You were sure. No. I mean, you have a vested interest to tell me no. But I can't think of others, right, that are standing up similar practices. I'm curious as to why it was so important for Visa to invest in this, right? It takes a lot of resources, a lot of money, not only to investigate these crimes, but also to hire, investigators, forensic analysts, et cetera, that would participate in this. So why spend that money?
So we started with the basic promise that we have to our consumers of making sure that we maintain, of course, the protected and secure payments ecosystem. Yeah. And as a result of that, we started looking at the different vectors that we see in the way of fraud. And scams kept coming up and up and up. And we realized quickly that we needed to come up with a product and service. But what we wanted to do is make sure the product was as much as foolproof as we could possibly launch it. And that's the reason why we've been preparing for this launch for the better part of almost 3 years before we went live. And a lot of it came from our customers and our clients. They were asking us to be able to have a sort of a joint effort to be able to control this crime or set of, I guess, vectors in the crime side of the house where it's growing every day, and unfortunately, we couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. So this is the reason why we decided that this is the right time for us to take an active role and to pretty much start playing in a space that generally we have not seen as many tools.
Totally. And on that note, right, you are building this practice, you're starting to see success, and digging into just the global scam ecosystem, right? But a lot of that also depends on partnerships with law enforcement, I'm assuming with other industry partners, even if they don't have a similar practice. Can you tell us a little bit about how those partnerships are going, and if there's any element where you can see, or any areas of growth that you are hoping to see or are working towards with your partners when it comes to information sharing?
I think one thing that is that we learned early on is that it's nearly impossible to be able to be successful in this environment operating alone. And this is something that we often tell our clients and our customers and regulators and law enforcement is that we need to be operating in tandem and unison. And I think the speed of communication is by far probably one of the best tools that we have. And that's either communicating with clients, communicating with consumers, and ultimately law enforcement. And I think that it's created an ecosystem, quite frankly, that's been able to give us a leg up in terms of being able to beat crooks at a game that they have been at it for a long time, and they're good at it because they're interconnected, speaking to each other. Cartels are talking to each other all the time, and nation states and so on, and so that is the reason why communication is important.
Gotcha. And when you're talking about the speed of communication, are you talking about the speed of communication between Visa and law enforcement being really fast, or Visa and, say your competitors who are also seeing similar things, or retailers, or who's a part of that chain?
So there's a service delivery chain on that.
Yeah.
Starts with whatever the fraud is, and then the first natural defense in there is, of course, the issuing institution or the bank or the financial institution or the digital wallet, they issue those credentials. Can we stop the transaction on a real-time basis? Then from there, the investigation starts and ends, of course, with all the data that we produce to be able to give it to law enforcement or regulators to be able to hopefully put those folks behind bars as fast as we can. But it follows a natural trend, which is something that we've been working at it for the past 11 years.
Yeah, and we are having this conversation in DC. Surprised if you guys didn't realize that. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this, right? And so you've laid out this chain of communication, all the players who are involved in the work that you're doing. Is there maybe one regulation, law, policy change that you would like to see happen that would make your job in this space a whole lot easier?
So I think it's not really quite a policy, but it's more about the collaboration that needs to exist. And that needs to be front and center for everyone. Every participant in the ecosystem that it's trying to do their jobs, we should do it in a coordinated way. And we do it today, but I think that requires more coordination, especially with many countries around the world. And I think probably if there was one item on my wish list is that hopefully we can put these folks away for a long time. Because we see them often emerge again.
Yeah.
And so if there was one wish in there that I would have is to see if we could get stiffer penalties for those folks, because they are career criminals. They do this for a living, and they're really good at it, as you can imagine. So putting them away, I don't know if it's going to make me sleep safer,
right?
But it will be a bit better.
Sure. And you know what? We have someone here who maybe can speak on that after this.
I believe so. I believe you have the right
Yes,
folks.
I think we have the right people coming after you to chat about that. But I have maybe two more questions for you, right? And
sure.
I promise I'll end on a fun one for you. So, but before then, I'll get to the hard one, which is collaboration, right? You mentioned that there needs to be this change in collaboration. I hear that all the time, whether it's in scam detection and fraud investigations, or just general cybersecurity cases, right? There's so many, cooks in the kitchen who have they can only see what's on their assembly line that's passing through, and then the other cooks need to chat with each other. I've never worked in the kitchen. I'm sure that's really showing right now, but you kind of see what I'm saying, right? Which is, I don't know how Visa is thinking through their role in creating and fostering that collaboration. How do you guys go about changing that culture? Because that is a cultural shift that takes so long to change. Yeah.
I think one of the things we're doing is we're formalizing much more the relationships that we need to do with law enforcement around the world.
Yep.
Generally, it's been in some places, I wouldn't say casual, but it's been more of sort of event-driven. We want to formalize those relationships with law enforcement. In fact, we're working with a large agency around the world as we speak. To be able to formalize that relationship. And I think that would be the catalyst that we would use to be able to do this around the world. Because we want to make sure that we have that flow of data and the exchange of data happening more or less on a real-time basis. That will give us a far greater chance of putting those folks behind bars.
Gotcha. And before our time runs up, at Axios, we like to end with one fun thing. With an event like this, it's kind of hard to have fun when we're talking about like scams and, maybe detaining people, et cetera. It's not quite fun, but I'll do my best here, which is around this time of year, I'm sure you, like me, get a lot of texts from friends, from family members who are worried about scams, worried about the weird texts that they're getting, what is one piece of advice that you always tell them to help them navigate that landscape?
I'm afraid the weaker link continues to be the consumer.
Yeah.
Don't click on that link. Just check again, double check. And even if it comes from a place that you think is very familiar to you, might be your alma mater, might be the city in which you live and so on, just check to make sure that indeed that is a legitimate link. As I said, today, crooks prey strictly on consumers to be sort of the first line of defense, and they're looking for that weakness. They're looking for, and especially now, as I said, that they know so much information about us, that they know exactly where you went to school, where you shop the most, and so on. And so please, if I could ask you for your help on this, is don't click on that link. Just triple check. Or, and if you go into a website that someone's telling you that you're going to get the greatest deal on earth about a particular item that you're looking for, because they know that you're looking for that item, so they're targeting you as a result of the shopping and the browsing that you've done, so they now know where you are. And of course, they're going to give you that offer of a lifetime. Just if it's too good to be true, generally it's not true.
Yes, totally. Sound advice. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being here. That
Thanks
was
for having me.
unfortunately the remainder of our time.